Alrighty, so starting off our second episode of We Don't Know Anything About Dating is today's topic. So we're talking about modern dating, not just talking about modern dating, traditional dating, just talking about the differences of what we see today as opposed to what we kind of expected based on what our parents' perspective were, based on movies we've seen, just the culture we've grown up in, and how culture has affected modern dating, as well as certain cultural things that talk about or that kind of affect what modern dating is like today. So as I've said before, my name is Sean. So welcome back to episode two.
Hell yeah, brother. Hello again. I'm Dalvin. Same person that I was last time. I think it's important we need to reiterate this. I'm 28 years old. I huge millennial energy coming into the conversation. How old are you, Sean? You're older, younger than me?
I'm
Like we're like life
29
apart.
years old, and I actually turned
29.
30 this year. It's scary.
Sheesh. And then we also have a special guest today. We're joined by Lauren. Lauren, hello. Tell us something about yourself.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I'm 21, so I got a lot to learn. I definitely have a lot I do not know. I think I'm in a perfect place for that.
I was gonna say you're in your
Cool.
prime years, so this is perfect time, right? So, but
Wait,
I mean,
we're all in our prime years, right? Don't do this to me, Sean.
yeah, I feel like my prime years don't start until 40, right? I think that's what the
That
traditional
is
like
what they
view is.
say.
Yeah, for
Oh, is
men.
that how it works? I don't know.
So
That's
yes,
what I know.
that's just what I've heard. So we don't know anything about these things, right?
So we all obviously have different we have different perspectives on dating. I know. I mean, I'm in a relationship currently. I've been in a relationship. 4 year anniversary is coming up next month. I'm in a long distance relationship at that. So, and I've kind of not really been exposed to like dating. Kind of like I've always been in long term relationships. I have some periods in between those relationships where I was dating, and I guess I can speak to that to some extent. But I don't have a lot of experience. And it's just some people that have been like in the dating scene for months or years, and I don't even know if that's the norm. But I've not actively pursued relationships for a good portion of my life. So I don't know like what you guys' experience is with dating, at least what we could call modern dating. Like when does it even begin and end?
Mhm. Well, my situation is kind of interesting. Recently divorced. Was married for about 3.5 years. I say 3.5 years where we were actively together, and then about 2 or 3 years of separation. So um, it's an interesting time. That being said, just got into a new relationship with somebody I've known for 14 years previously, known her since high school. So uh, it's been a very different situation in that when you've typically, I guess nowadays I don't know, maybe not typically, but I guess from my perspective, from what I've experienced, we I've typically dated somebody that I haven't really known for a really long time, and built like a friendship, a foundation of friendship before actually building an intimate relationship with them. So it's been very interesting going from 14 years of friendship into going into a relationship, like the
Hmm.
intimacy portion. So it's definitely very interesting, and I think it has left us with a fairly strong foundation thus far. But I'm also speaking on the perspective of the military and how I guess difficult it can be to date whenever you're a distance, based on my own experiences as well as all the people I work with. So.
Ah, interesting. I think that's cool too. Like you are now entering in or were entering in the dating scene after having obviously been married for some time, so
Mhm.
maybe you do have like some new age experience. I'm kind of curious about that. Like what about you, Lauren?
I actually have questions for Sean before I forget. Are you seeing different aspects of yourself, who you are now versus who you were back then, that are affecting the way you go about dating somebody new? Or do you think it's more of society having changed that affects how you got to go about it now.
It's interesting. I think that there's definitely, I mean, naturally for everyone, when you start growing up, or maturing, I should say. I don't know if I've grown up yet, but as you mature, age-wise, you learn a lot more things about not just yourself, but also the opposite sex and opposite gender. It's, I guess I'm learning a lot more about like what I can do and to make sure that that my partner is feeling comfortable and loved in the relationship. But additionally, like after uh, my wife, my previous wife, did leave or separated, uh, it gave me a lot of perspective on mistakes that I had made and let me like look back at hindsight's 2020 as you
Mhm.
probably heard multiple times. It's interesting looking back now and recognizing, hey, this is where I screwed up here. I could have done that better, and now I can do better in the next relationship. In regards to how modern cultural standards, or I guess the way that culture has moved us, I don't know if it necessarily affected me directly. I will say that both of them had very different leanings when it came to political and views on, um, I guess, relationships and how they're supposed to be uh, navigated. um, but I will say that there are some similarities that I've been able to draw on those experiences to, I guess, improve my communication with my current um, girlfriend. Put it that way.
Huh.
You
So
said,
like, oh, go
uh,
ahead.
Is that
Sean, you said you would put it that way. Uh, whenever you or did you ever ask your current girlfriend to be your current girlfriend? Like, for formalities and stuff. Back in the day, it would be like, oh, you need to ask the parents to be able to even start dating their daughter. What does that look like today versus your relationships in the past or who you were in the past?
so? It is a little more complicated considering I am military now, since I'm not really located. Well, in my current situation, I'm not located close to uh, my girlfriend either. Like it's still kind of a long distance. Like it's a day's drive, but not a it's not like I can just kind of show up whenever type situation.
Right.
So in that regard, she does live relatively close to her parents, and her parents do know me from previously because we knew each other from high school. But it definitely didn't go down the route of asking her parents if we could date. I did ask her to date a couple of times. At first, she was like, "I don't really know how I feel about it. Like, I need to think about it some more. Figure out what I want, basically." But and then I asked again later on, whenever she had a little bit more time, and she still kind of was like, "I'm not really sure." And uh, basically, she said, "Never mind. I'm not really. I don't think I want to do that." And I found out that it was because she was concerned about losing the friendship that we had, because she had never maintained a relationship with somebody, like a friendship with somebody, after she had dated them. So she was worried that she would lose my friendship in that case, and she didn't want to. So she turned around and she was talking, got some advice from others, and changed her mind on that. And then she actually asked me at that point. So um, in regards to asking her parents for a relationship, I think if I if it comes down to, if we progress enough that I decide I want to pursue this as a marriage, um, uh, then at that point, I personally, my values, I guess, would push me to go and speak to her parents and ask them for permission at that point.
I'm thinking like, you know, like, do you remember what it was like when you were dating as a teenager or when you were super young, and then you were coming from that perspective of like, interacting or like where you were back then, maybe that's a bit, maybe more of like that traditional ish kind of, or that younger mentality? Is it, I think maybe to speak more on the differences between like your perspective on dating when you were young and would maybe have to ask their parents for permission to where it is now. And do you think that any of those like things that you cared about when you were a kid or younger translate to today? You feel like some of those values have gone by the wayside? I don't know, like maybe if that's a bit more um, of a way to ask that question.
I think in some ways, yes, there are some things that have I guess transferred very well to modern dating, but I think that there are a lot of things that did not transfer very well. At least whenever we were dating in high school, we were spending time with them all the time, and you see them every day because you go to school with them. It's a little different now, particularly in the case that kind of our situation where we're a little bit at distance from our girlfriends, our partners. I think it comes at that point. It comes down to there's a level of difficulty in, I think, for lack of a better way of saying it, wooing um, the person that you're interested in nowadays. And I don't know if that's due to social media, if that's due to the way that I guess we have such like instant access, I guess, to dating virtually when you think about all the different dating apps and hookup apps that are out there like Tinder, Plenty of Fish, Bumble, all these different apps are
Yeah,
available
Hinge,
nowadays.
Grinder, all that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's much because it's so readily available. It's more difficult to, uh, I guess, convince a person that that you want to go and that it's worth taking the time to out of their day to see if this is a potential partner or a potential match, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I didn't actually consider that perspective. I'm not trying to like steal your, but is that, I'm like trying to, does that answer your question, Lauren? I don't know.
Yes, uh, in a way. Um, I like how you mentioned that online dating is instant access. Um, and having instant access to somebody isn't always necessarily a good thing because it doesn't always lead to genuine interaction.
Hmm.
Whenever you're in person, you get that face to face connection. You can see their nonverbal cues, things that make you more attracted to a person and more invested in a person are lost whenever you have that instant access on these dating apps like Hinge, Tinder, Bumble, etc.
Hmm.
Right. It even more so, like the point that you're making, I think is very good. Even more so that because those things aren't present, you don't, that's not working in your favor whenever these interactions are happening. So what are you left with in order to make a decision? Especially like this is like a well-known ideology here that women on that online dating space are basically, you have to make a judgment, like both of you guys are making a decision, but so what factors are going into play if you can't just tell what kind of person they are face to face, right? And a lot of that is like whatever it is that you're saying in your bio and what you look like,
Right.
you know. And so before you would ever even get the chance to meet or talk to this individual, that's what you're left with. And sometimes that's like the most redeeming quality that some people have, and that part is just completely gone with the online dating.
Exactly,
um,
because there's only so much data you can put online and capture about yourself. It's
Mhm.
so much different than talking to a person and building that connection
right.
physically, right? Maybe not like physically, but in person. So,
Yeah, there's just so much more. I mean, this is a conversation that my girlfriend and I have all the time, like because we're long distance. She lives in Singapore, right? I'm not a day trip anywhere away from her, you know what I mean? Like
right.
it there that we know the difference from having had these experiences that like phone calls are one thing, video calls are another thing, and then being in person is a completely different thing altogether. And it's just like such a wealth of information. um like even me, for example, like a lot of my humor is very situational. So if we aren't in a situation, I can't convey that. And maybe being funny is like something that somebody finds a lot of value in, and then you don't really get that. So I don't know.
Right.
It's very interesting. But I think that's kind of something that a lot of people are familiar with. At least I think a lot of I don't know. I think this is the case. I feel like people are used to the dating culture shifting to being online, and there's a
Right.
bit of um, like a process or a protocol for how you're supposed to do these things, or
Right.
how you're supposed to go about doing them. Like at least I know from this end what that would be like.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it would. I mean, in the potential virtual future we're moving to, where we're all just uploaded into a matrix of some sort, that may be a different situation there, but that kind of relies on everybody being taking part in that regard. But you still kind of miss out on until we get the technology there. You're still going to be missing out on
Dude,
something. And I know that's like jumping off to the side a little bit, but
not far off.
yeah.
Considering what dating is going to be like in the future is a really interesting topic. But like, imagine this sort of like future where it's like you're in a museum and you're having to look at museum exhibits of how people dated traditionally. Like, and then I just imagine
It's not
like
going to be
a couple
caveman.
generations.
It's not going to
Yeah,
be caveman
yeah, like
anymore. It's going to be me and you standing there with our cell phones, or sitting in on a bar stool. It's going to be great.
right. Yeah, they'll like make a bar scene, and then it'll be like back in the 2000s, you had to approach a woman physically in order to get their attention. Like, I feel
Some
like that's gonna be really, really wild, dude.
Sometimes that led to a smile. Sometimes that led to water in your face or a beer in your face.
Could you imagine that? And then like your grandchildren are like, you had to meet people physically? That's insane. Like,
So how about you, Lauren? What's been your, I guess, dating experience? Like, are you currently in a relationship?
I am not, Sean. Good question. Thank you for asking. After going through all those high school relationships that we were touching on earlier, where you see them every single second of the day,
Hmm.
like, and you're always around them, you never have to actually commit because, I mean, you're young and you think you're in love and
Hmm.
you don't have any bills or adult things to get in the way. So after going through that and then immediately transferring that into my first real world relationship, I realized that I need to take time to figure out what I think these things actually are.
Hmm.
With who I'm figuring out myself to be, I don't see room for another person right now because my goal is to be able to support somebody else and get to know somebody else.
Hmm.
Uh, what I think love is the continual support of somebody's growth and happiness. And I'm definitely not in a place I can do that. Not until I can give it to myself.
I get that.
But oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, no, please go. Please, you weren't finished.
But that's not to say I'm still not learning about relationships and connections with other people. The place I'm really starting at right now is friendships because I
Hmm.
realized I never learned how to build proper friendships either. And eventually we'll get to the relationship part, but
sure.
I'm happy right now.
I'm just really curious because like I think your perspective is relatively unique, at least to my own. Do you feel like whatever societal culture exists in high school or even before this point, leading up to the point that you're at, do you feel like any of that is adaptive and helping you be able to take a relationship into the adult age, or do you feel like it was actually kind of maladaptive, especially with like the increased usage of social media, online dating apps kind of being prevalent? Like I think that when I was going through high school, I feel like that was when the online dating apps really started to pop off. Like early
Really?
2010, 20, yeah, like, and so I was hearing about these apps being a thing going through high school. And so but now, I'm imagining the generations beforehand or even 10 years ago, right? Like that they've had it this whole time. And are people is there's like a subcontext underneath school where people are meeting on these apps, or social media is like facilitating these relationships a bit more than they used to in the past? And is that helpful? I mean, I know you decided for yourself to take a step back, but I'm curious as to maybe like what you think about that. I couldn't imagine so.
Right. Overall, I think these apps can be helpful. It depends on the user and their intentions. I know that in high school, when high schoolers are using these apps, it's more so for like a time filler almost,
Mm.
which when you think about what these apps are meant for is to find those that genuine love connection. At least that's what they advertise them to be. You don't think of that as being a time filler, but that's mainly what I would see them being used for. And if not that, then just like your hook up every now and then, but never anything that was meant to be serious or had the intention of being serious.
I
Gotcha.
see.
And
So I don't know, like if I fully agree with that idea. Like I don't think that dating apps are very like I don't know if they're selling the idea of like true love. I don't think you go anywhere like even ubiquitously that like Tinder is saying, "Hey, meet your true love, meet your soulmate." Maybe that is true. I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I'm interested to see like
I've been
what the
seeing some ads on YouTube videos recently where it'll be like, "Oh, you didn't think your first kiss would lead to your wedding," or little comparisons like that where it's like, "Oh, you didn't think it would this little minuscule meeting would end up changing the rest of your life," are the
I,
slogans that they've been giving.
I definitely I know what you're talking about with that. At least being single not too long ago, I was able to I was getting the targeted ads of, hey, this about time for you to sign up for eHarmony because that's where you're gonna find your true love, and it's like that. And I see those targeted ads through YouTube as well as even just on like YouTube TV or I think I caught one on Hulu one time as well for eHarmony. I didn't even know that they advertised there. I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with that. I did have a quick question on what you meant by I guess just to clarify what you meant on time filler for these apps. Are you comparing it to something similar to like scrolling through Facebook or watching the YouTube Shorts or like TikTok, like something like that, or is it something else that I'm not?
the YouTube shorts.
The YouTube shorts, I found that one funny too. Definitely in similarity to those, as in like the mindless split decision of are they cute or not. The I think that they being dating apps definitely influence high school minds, those young minds that don't really understand. And this is me from most recently being there in that situation. Like I was super superficial and having access to things like these dating apps. I wasn't even looking for a connection. I was just using it because I was, you know, wasn't content or didn't have anything better to do or was just wanting to feel better about myself. Like just scroll through these apps knowing I have a choice to accept or deny them.
Gotcha.
So
So
that's what I find myself doing.
it's like kind of entertainment though, is what you're.
That's quite entertainment. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yikes. I didn't know this. I just looked this up, right? I didn't know like what the age restriction was on Tinder. Wait, what do you think it is, Sean?
I'm I feel like it should be 18, but I'm betting it's like 16.
Lauren, do you know?
I know that people will change it to make their age older and then have to edit it in their bio like, "Oh, I'm actually 19, not 21," because there is an age restriction, but I am not certain what that restriction is.
You have to be at least 13 years old to use.
13?
Yeah, yeah. So teens cannot connect with people who are over the age of 18. If you say you're 13, you can only see people between the ages of 13 and 17. And I think that that's very interesting. I didn't know that first and foremost. But then also like what you're saying is also true. Like people change their age. And I think I've seen this a couple times. And they'll put in their bio, this is the age I actually am because they want to appeal to older audiences, or they want to cross that threshold to see basically everybody else that's out there. Wow, how dangerous is that?
Yeah.
I also found some ads for Tinder, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, like you don't have to advertise for loneliness. You know, like everybody wants to find I don't know about everybody. Okay. I think that it's a genuine human need to connect with other people. And that's what these apps do, right? They connect you. And I think, I don't know, they're relatively interesting, but I didn't think that they were like promising to find fulfilling relationships. I think there's like a way to meet people, but they're saying like, here's like proving astrology right. It all starts with a swipe, you know, and,
Yeah.
or here's one's like, comfortable silences. It all starts with a swipe. Like they're definitely advertising the idea that uh, you can find a relationship with somebody. I don't know about marriage or happiness or whatever, but
Which is really interesting because whenever they started out, it's like, no, 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 this is literally just for hooking up. You're not gonna like, we're not promising you meet your Prince Charming or your queen, but you're going to like, you're gonna find people to meet up with. Uh,
yeah, but is that us? Did society do that, or did Tinder say that? Did Tinder ever outright say, "Hey, swipe right, hook up right now"? You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's
I don't
both.
know.
But I think it's Tinder that's reacting to societal's, I guess, cultural changes. Because a
That
few
would make
years
sense.
ago, well, I say a few years ago, so like, yeah, like 10 years ago, it was completely different. It was more of a like, hey, we're not, people are more interested in just, like sexual liberation. It's like, hooking up, like being together, right? But nowadays, everybody, because there's the, decreasing marriage, decreasing marriage rates, decreasing birth rates, now it's becoming I guess a societal thing that, hey, people are wanting more connection nowadays, but they're not
Yeah.
able to find it. So Tinder and these other apps are trying to help with that, but how successful are they really is the question, I guess, at this point.
I'm imagining they're widely successful, right? Like getting people together, I'm imagining is the easy part. But then whether or not those two individuals like have the capacity, the capability, the intention, like Lauren was saying earlier, to like say, hey, this is what my needs are, this is what I'm looking for. Can we make this happen? Is no different than any other like situation you would find yourself in a dating world, right? Because that's you have to do that. That burden has to be met no matter what, right? And people know what's attractive. You know, if I were trying to meet as many people as possible and my intention is actually to just, you know, maximize my chances of sleeping with somebody, then I would be the most successful in theory by casting a wide net, right? And being that generally like, oh yeah, I'm this person, I'm into this thing, and I fit this bill or this profile, right? And then if it turns out I'm not that case, well, I'm sorry you got hurt in the process. I
Yeah.
got what I wanted out of it. I don't know. Maybe that's a little too narrow minded. I don't.
No,
I mean,
I don't think I disagree with that. I do think that, I guess, desires have changed over the last few years, and I think it does has to have to do with culture, though. Is 'cause I've been looking at some of these videos that some people are putting out. There's some other like wildly popular podcasts like Fresh and Fit, whatever. Like there's a few others that I've pulled like clips from to see like what everybody's saying, and there seems to be a common theme in that. Uh, I guess they talk about what the traditional expectations are for men and women, and that nobody's meeting those expectations, or they want someone else to meet those expectations and not fulfill their own expectations, I guess, from the other side's perspective.
right.
So I think that's what's been causing this big shift, and the fact that now Tinder is like, oh no, we should be like, there's going to be a problem if birth rates don't pick up, or if we don't maintain, the population at this point. Because I
Oh,
think it's like every single, well, I think it's like every single country in the world for the most part, except maybe like three or four, that their birth rates have gone in the negative, to how many people are passing away because of age, or whatever reason. So if you can't maintain the population, then for one, that sucks for the business side, because they're not going to have new people that they can, sell their product to. But on the other side, it's difficult to maintain a society without maintaining what's already established, I guess. So
yeah. I guess you'd have to compare it against the fertility rate to see how many, like, what the net that children are actually having. But I never considered like these social media or these dating apps to be like pioneers to combat like low birth rates. You know what I mean? Like that sounds actually very interesting.
I just
Oh
look at
yeah.
it from the business perspective. Like you got to have someone to buy your product, and if everybody's gotten married or have decided I'm just never going to, then you
And
don't
then why
have
do they need Tinder,
customers.
right?
Exactly.
I mean, there is always an agenda. Somebody is always going to have an agenda. You never know if something as simple, I'm doing air quotes, quote unquote, simple as dating apps could be, you know, benefiting that agenda or not.
Yeah,
That's
I
a totally other thing to think about.
that's kind of strange. You're right that these companies do have a motive or a benefit too. I think some people have taken the extreme stance that like these companies actually want you to be lonely, right? Because it's when you're lonely that you'll want to actually use the app. Like if people are single and they're happy, then you also lose that person, right? Because they're not interested in having relationships or finding other people. They're content with their lives. So
Hmm.
Exactly.
it's not enough that you would want that to happen. Not even everybody that wants to get together would even want to have children. So that is a motivating factor, but it doesn't have to be primarily the motivating factor. Like if you are one of these apps and you want the most people to use them as possible, you benefit the most when the most people are lonely. And do you think that these companies are trying to farm loneliness, especially with ads like this? You look at an ad that says like, "Oh, find your happy place in another person, somebody to go to heaven with," and it's like, shit, that's what I want. Like that. Oh no, like I don't have a comfortable silence partner. That's what I want. Let me get Tinder. Because Tinder will solve that problem for me. I don't know, like, and
Yeah.
how could a company reasonably like foster loneliness? That's so strange.
It comes down to the business practice and honestly to some degree the algorithms at some point because that's what's making the determining factor. And like what's going to make them just happy enough that they want, like that they are show that it shows that there's value in our app, but not so happy that they abandon it completely, or what's going to push, or what can we do to help them not be pushed away from paying us for this service. So
Dude, I was thinking like, should there be some agency in these apps to like teach people how to have long lasting relationships, right? Like, but if that loses their population base or their user base, sorry, then I could see why they wouldn't want to. Because I don't know, that seems like to be the issue. Like getting people to meet isn't the problem, but having long lasting connecting relationships that function the way people want them to, or I guess maybe at least amicably, is better. So you would promote hookup culture, right? Like you would glorify that. And then you would want like instability or like chaotic relationships so that more people continue to use the app. Uh,
Right.
right.
I don't want to get too far in conspiracy territory with this because I just like understand that there's a motive for that thing.
Hmm.
But I do also recognize that these apps do very good things, and people do meet lifelong partners. I personally don't have an issue with dating apps because I think that more avenues that we have to meet other people, the better. Especially in a world where we become increasingly disconnected, or even in situations like the global pandemic where we were unable to really go out physically and meet in some of these places. I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of transition topics because like we are looking at ourselves and asking us like modern dating versus traditional dating, and I guess I'm curious as to what you guys' definition of modern dating is and traditional dating, and when did it begin and end? Like when did that period? How do we know we were in a new epic, so to speak?
I don't think you recognize it until after it's shifted, and I don't even think it's I don't think it's something that you can necessarily pinpoint to a specific moment that shifted it massively. Like it's going to be a slow, casual shift as time goes on because not everybody
Yeah,
jumps to that new ideology, I guess, of dating, right?
yeah,
So
obviously, yeah. It's so much so that like what you're saying is absolutely true. You don't know that you're in a new era until you look back on it and say, okay, well, this is what was happening. So that's what I'm asking you. Like, we do all recognize that modern dating is the era that we're in now. So at some point, there are traditional dating beliefs, and they ended, or at least they were changed irrevocably in such a way that we now have modern dating. What do you think that is? What like criteria are there that aren't being met? Like, I do understand too that people still date traditionally, so to speak, but obviously modern dating is the thing that's happening alongside of it.
I can't fully comment because I think since I've have been born, we have been in the modern dating, uh, what would you call it? Like, not an
Yeah.
arc. This is not
Era.
it's not yeah, an era. Modern dating era. But if I had to guess, I would say social media has had a huge impact on not only the dating scene, but also our communication in general. Because even the way we speak used to be so polite and just very, it had like a level of intelligence to it, and I have seen that go down, um, and as well as the way we're able to connect with other people go down. Like Dalvin, you had mentioned the pandemic, that's a prime example of a major event that changed the way humans interact with humans. And I'm sure you both have many other things you could think of that could apply to that, like things that have just changed how humans interact with each other, that have led us up to this point. It really is like our principalities or our principles are changing. And Sean, like you also said, you don't notice it until it's already happened. You don't notice how much has changed until you're like, wow, when did this start being acceptable worldwide? Like, when did this start to be the most accepted thing?
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I guess if I had to, well, first off, the just as you said, the pandemic was a massive shift for us. If we had to point to something that was a big, like a massive shift that we could point to specifically, it would be, I think, I guess what the situation we were put in during the pandemic. So everybody was interacting online, and there's even videos, like multiple videos that came out where it was showing. Like one in particular that I remember very distinctly was a woman saw a man across in the other building across the street from her, and was like, she thought he was cute, so she's like, hey, like, what's up, like, here's my number, we should talk or whatever. And then finally at the end of the video they end up going on a physical date, like they went in person once they were allowed to. So that was definitely a massive shift for everybody, and it kind of pushed everybody because nobody was able to make those connections unless they had a online, I guess they had established online relationships with friends that they were spending time with, or a significant other to reach out to and talk to regularly. And I think that definitely caused a massive shift. But going back to, I guess, your question, Dalvin, I guess the difference that I see between traditional and modern dating is kind of harkening back to the question that Lauren asked me earlier, and that one of the things was, hey, you're going to go to uh, your significant other's parents and be like, hey, I'd really like to date your daughter. Is that okay? And you would pick them up yourself from their house, and you would take care of them, make them feel wanted and loved throughout the night. And then you find after that you made the decision on whether or not that was a relationship you wanted to pursue. But this has also been something that I've started to see much more commonly recently in modern dating, is that if they start the date and it's like, I'm not really feeling the vibes, they just split all of a sudden, and they don't really
Yeah.
say anything. It's just they're gone. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I think that's, for one thing, that's incredibly rude. But I think that that's something that has come from social media, and that they think that that's okay when they stop thinking, or when they get to the point where they don't feel comfortable anymore. They just be like, they don't talk about it. They just, like, they can either block the person, just ignore the person, just stop conversing with them, and it just ends right there. And I think that's one of the things that at least social media has led to, I guess, that kind of problem. But
I think that you make a really good point, that the idea that there are more options and they're more readily available, specifically to, or maybe more preferential for women, that they would be more inclined to do that. Because I think you're saying, like, somebody who's attracted to somebody really wants to start a relationship with somebody they find is worthwhile, and what they define as being worthwhile or having a lot of value to them personally is different. And if they don't see it immediately, not necessarily immediately, but or if they get red flags early, they're like, okay, I don't have to deal with this. There's plenty of other people out there. And then there's a lot of pressure on the other side for, like, I get really one shot at this. And if, I screw it up, then I got to go back into the weeds for, I don't know, X amount of days or months or weeks or whatever until I can find somebody else. So maybe the standards are changing and that's different. But I think what Lauren said was pretty spot on. Like, I think the advent of modern technology progressing us to living more of our lives online, i.e., social media, the cell phone, smartphones, maybe more specifically, has shifted us into an online space for meeting people. Obviously, this is a huge technology like the internet. And as that's progressing, then we utilize it for more things that matter to us. So obviously, dating is one of them. I actually was able to find. I was looking for something like this, but I found something pretty close. It wasn't the exact one that I found in the past, where Stanford did a study where they surveyed a bunch of people, and they asked them how couples met, and then from 1995 to 2017, and back in 1995, 2% of those people said that they met online. Um, it was 2% online, and the winner was through friends. 33% was through friends. So before, people are meeting through friends, friends of friends. You know people, you have friend groups, you have social groups, and that's how you're doing it. 19%. This is an even split across the board. Bars and restaurants. 19% from work. 19% from school and college, and then another 15% through friends and family. Right. Sorry, not friends and family, but through family. Friends is 33%. Sorry. Um, and now the shift has happened where online is at the top. So 2017, it's 40% people are meeting online. I'm imagining that number is much higher now than it was 5 years ago, even. Uh, and then 27% at bars and restaurants. And those are the only two that saw an increase. More people are meeting people at bars and restaurants, or they're meeting them online. Everything else is down. One of the more significant decreases is from school and college. Fewer people are meeting the people they're dating from college, and you got fewer people are going to college. Men are dropping out of college more often and are not going. The pandemic definitely didn't help with that, where a lot of them dropped out to pursue jobs in order to support their families. Um, and women are more likely to finish and go through college now. I think it's um, a huge number of people that we see now these days. Men aren't finishing school; they're not going to school and aren't finishing school. So it just makes sense that they're not also meeting partners at school. Likewise for women, right? There's fewer men going to school, so there's just fewer opportunities there and for them to meet them. So like, what other option do you have, right? Like, of all those most commonly ways to meet people, I mean, I did through friends, right? But 40% online. That's huge.
Yeah, and that's that's how I met my first wife, is through online, and it turned into it went from talking online for a couple of days and then deciding, hey, let's go on like an actual date, and it turned out really well. But it is interesting that you yeah, I would 100% agree that I think with the availability of online dating and the way that it's set up, I think that there is a genuine like I guess the way that I perceive it is that there's more of a smorgasbord for women, I guess, who because men are much more inclined to because I guess the traditional way that maybe it's just within our genes or I don't know what it is exactly. There's an expectation that men are the ones that initiate, right? So
Sure.
if you have multiple men initiating with you, you have a group of choices to select from, as opposed to if you reach out and try to get in contact with one. I guess from the women's side, I guess the desire there is different. It's a little difficult for me to explain because I'm still trying. I'm still kind of like I'm only recently figuring out or finding out that it is I guess that way. I never
Yeah.
realized like through my times using the dating apps, I messaged multiple people, because we matched or whatever, and I got responses maybe one out of every 10 that I would send, and
Mhm. That's a pretty good rate, by the way.
well, but I'd get a response, but it would just be like, "Oh yeah, hi" or whatever, and they would talk with me for a couple of minutes, and then like the conversation would go, like they would just stop responding, and then I would, shoot another message back another day or two later, still wouldn't see anything, and they were just gone. I was ghosted at that point, I guess is the term nowadays. But
Yeah.
so out of those, one out of hundreds of messages actually landed me a date or something like that, right? If that makes sense. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
What you're saying is true.
I've definitely been more, I guess, successful in person. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So
I think what you're saying is to expand on that a little bit. Like my understanding of the situation is, and this is just me. Like I'm obviously approaching this from a male perspective. Is that if you're a woman or female or attractive female, especially in an online dating app, you do have options. People are pursuing you, and they're almost exclusively you're the one who's sitting down at the table and deciding who it is that you want to match with. I don't know. I've seen like jokes or memes or something where it's like uh, every time a woman swipes right on somebody, which is the accepting side, to my understanding, it's going to be a match for them. And then men just swipe right for everybody just to see who's interested.
right,
And if that's the paradigm that you're dealing with, like even if there's an equal number of men and women, then they're not all getting equal opportunity and attention, right? Because that woman has to respond to all these people that are sending her messages about all different kinds of things. You know what I mean? And so like you're getting your chance. And if you're not captivating enough, you're not charming enough, you're not, forthcoming enough, you don't, you know, show the different signs of attractiveness, then you don't get that opportunity. I think from the last time I did some research on this, like the poll was like, if you're online dating, there are only a few factors that you can consider, and what women find attractive, and I mean, I could be wrong about this. It's what I read, is going to be how you look, if they can tell if there's some sort of stability in your income, um, and also like the first like 2 or 3 lines of your bio or something like that. Outside of that, there's like nothing else, and that's why some apps like you don't get to even put a full bio in there because they know it's a waste of time to some extent. And so if you can't win with that, then what chance do you have? I'm not saying that you are not experiencing success because you're deficient in any of that. You may just not be presenting yourself in such a way that you're able to leverage the system. But it does make sense to me that you're more successful in person because you get to leverage so much more than just those 3 things.
right,
And I think that goes to everybody's service, and that's why I think people tend to have better luck. My understanding too is that like if you have hard standards, like as a female, I mean, maybe this is even true for men. If you have hard standards, the longer amount of time you spend with somebody, the less those things matter. So being at a bar or meeting somebody physically and being able to be in their space for a longer period of time. I'm not saying that this is an excuse to like stalk or hover around people. Get the
right,
message, guys, if you're not like getting that. But what I am saying is that your chances go up if you don't you're not 5'11", you're not 6'3" or whatever, but you're in person and oh my god, actually this guy's kind of funny, or hey, you know what, this guy's actually really cool, or this guy seems pretty nice. Those things do matter also, or he smells nice. Like there's just so many different things that you can get
right,
that you're not going to get in the online space. So I think that all those things considered, like I think men have it pretty tough, the position that they're in dating, unless I say this is unless you are categorically very attractive. That's
or
like
very successful.
yeah, which plays into attractiveness, I think.
Okay,
When I say that,
yeah,
like you're either physically good looking, you can prove or ascertain to some degree that you make a lot of money, you're successful. Those types of people, if you're both, especially, hello, um,
yeah,
they're going to be the ones that are experiencing a similar like amount of success that women are experiencing. But there's so fewer guys, I think, that are in that category. I think that most men, or the majority of men, aren't like that, and
right.
so yeah, you get this paradigm or this place, and I think that some people are talking about. Um, are you guys familiar with the term like hypergamy?
Hmm.
Like the
Yeah,
idea that women only want to date up. I believe that's what it is. Like
yeah. I'm definitely, I've definitely heard that before, but yeah, I just
so
haven't
they
looked into the term hypergamy very, very much. So,
yeah, I'm not sure on the official definition, but I understand that it's being used in this space to like say that women want to date up or at least even, right? And then men are the ones that date down. And so if men, or women are always dating up, then what happens to men on the bottom is the real question. And what can they do? It seems like a lose-lose situation for men where more and more and more and more people are going to online dating space. where you have less chances and fewer resources. You're not meeting people physically. You're not meeting them through friends. You have so little to work with to make yourself marketable in the pursuit of somebody. Um, what do you do? Not only that, but like one of your highest value things is that women don't like to have partners that out earn them. And now women are the ones that are finishing college. Women are the ones that are going through school, and they're actually able to now hold their own financially in the space. So now it's actually more difficult for men to compete with that. And now there's fewer men in the viable dating pool for some of these women because to be more successful than that is more and more challenging. So it seems like a miserable, not necessarily miserable, it seems like a bleak existence for men, especially if you aren't conventionally attractive, to date successfully in this new space. And I don't know what there is to be done about that.
I was going to say, so what needs? I was about to ask, what do you think needs to happen?
What I can't answer that question to some extent, but I feel like I spoke a lot, and I was interested in what you guys' thoughts are.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree, but I would definitely love to hear, I guess, Lauren's perspective on, I guess, what part of it is what are you looking for in a guy, and what, or a partner, I should say, or what is. I know you said that right now you're just focusing on yourself, but what has been a motivating factor for you in the past to looking at somebody as a potential partner?
Mm, I would say what I look for or what I admire in other people, because that's what really matters. I'm just attracted to anybody. It doesn't really matter to me. Don't really care. Um, so that's why I say what I admire in other people is their tenacity and kindness, just not giving up and treating everybody the same regardless of what they may have or not have. That genuine uh mindset is what I look for, and that's just difficult to find because people are so distracted by so many things. I definitely think social media plays a big part in that distraction.
Sure.
Uh that's why are created I don't think dating apps can create a genuine experience in themselves, but I agree that they are an outlet to put yourself out there, and that will always be a good thing. It's just up to the individual the way they're gonna utilize it.
What do you think about like what do you think like do you understand at least what I was saying earlier about like the men's position in the dating scene currently? Do you like what are your thoughts on that?
I do understand what you were saying about that, and I think that can be explained by what Sean was saying, how he would land maybe 1 in 10, and that was after sending, like, hundreds of messages. Whereas being a woman on this app, I would have every time I would open the app, I would have so many messages without even having to have done anything. So before I could even put a little bit of effort or investment into using the app, I had an overflow of just so many potential matches that for me was overwhelming. So I definitely would just open them, maybe not even be able to respond because there's already so many, so what am I even supposed to do? How am I supposed to choose? How do I know what this person is like in the
Right.
real world? There's no way to put your true essence on a dating profile. So I just never really use them, but
Gotcha.
that's a woman's point of view. Maybe that can give you some insight.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I will. So I guess to follow that up, did you ever have a Bumble profile?
I did.
Okay.
That's what I was mainly talking about.
Okay.
Those opinions are from that app.
Okay, because the difference between that one that I noticed is that men weren't allowed to message first. It came down to women had to message first and initiate the conversation, even though they might have been matched. So I guess what kind of position did that put you in? Did you feel comfortable with that? Is that something that made it easier at all for you to I guess digest what was I guess the maybe the level of attention that you were getting, the I guess the number of connections that you were making on there?
Right. You had mentioned before, one of you had mentioned before that a man will swipe every time just for the chance, and then a woman will swipe and it's most likely going to be a match. The
Hmm.
only thing that would create less results if I wasn't swiping, because the amount of times I would swipe and the amount of matches I would get would almost be the same.
Yeah.
Um, and then the same result would be just me having all these open chats where it would just be them saying like, "Hey," or me saying like a couple things and then it dies. And
Right.
then I will see my friends that are boys, they'll show me their app and it's empty. It looks like they haven't even been using it, even if it could be the most used app on their phone.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But being the one that had to initiate the conversation in that regard, that didn't make you uncomfortable at all or anything?
On a level of comfortability, I felt it was a nice change to be in control of who I got to talk to versus who got to talk to me.
Mm.
Because I always feel as a woman somewhat seen as an object. Just it doesn't matter what degree, it's always a thought in my mind that that could be the way this man is seeing me.
Right.
Gotcha. Then, and I guess being on okay, so I'm sure that you have like Instagram and some of the, I guess, other social media apps aside from Facebook, right?
Yes.
I assume that you get DMs there as well.
On occasion, I'm
Mhm.
super strict with them just so I can avoid that. I've
Right.
had a couple people, a couple men, uh, who just didn't get the hint, and so, they end up getting blocked.
I gotcha.
But that's just because I have really honestly I just don't care.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And the only reason I'm asking is to better get better context of like I guess what your experience has been in those, because I know that there are some people out there that are just getting constant, messages from random people that they've never met before, and others not so much, right? I guess from my experience, I've never heard of a male that had that level of attention, but I guess my the other part of my asking you was to better understand what your perspective was on the attention I guess you were getting as well. Was it like a good, like, based on what you said, it sounds like it was a negative, a net negative amount of attention, meaning it wasn't something you were looking for. But um, I guess what what fills that space for you? Because I know that like just in general, humans are social creatures, and I think that women are more social than men in most cases. I guess where do you get your attention from at this point, if not from say the dating apps or uh, like would it be family? Would it be friends? Like spending time outside of like off the internet, like in person type stuff.
Uh, I definitely am on a self-fulfillment journey. I find myself only wanting to accept that acceptance if it's coming from me. But I do have something to say about the DM situation. I
Mm-hmm.
understand now, after hearing the second part of what you had to say, exactly what you were a little better what you were trying to ask me. Um, and it's not that it was unwanted, but the things that they will send, like for example, a heart eye emoji, and then try to be like, so what's up? And how am I supposed to create a connection with you if you've already shown me your motive?
right, that they're attracted to you physically rather than, I guess, what you are as a person.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There.
I will say I do agree that I think that that's not. I mean, I agree that that would be definitely frustrating to experience. I will say though that I guess the connection has to start somewhere. Um, and if they don't find you attractive, then they're just not going to DM you at all, right? So I guess
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's like even when you're in person, like out and around, like hanging out at the bar, like looking for somebody that you're interested in or whatever. I say the bar just because that's a general social scene, but anywhere else, like even at the mall or something like that, someone's not
Yeesh.
just going to come up with you if they don't find you attractive, right? So I
Exactly.
guess it has to
And
start somewhere.
exactly. And also in person, you can't say an emoji, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that ties into how social media is not meant for genuine interactions.
Right.
If you're on the phone and you don't have the communication skill set to be able to communicate with me like you would in person, like how am I supposed to interact with you? It's
Hmm.
just a immediate red flag for me
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
you aren't able to do something you should be able to do just because you're always on the phone.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. I would agree 100%. I think that that was a difficulty that I've had in the past with, I would say that with folks that are, or I guess maybe significant others that are obsessed with social media and they can't get off their phone, right? Um, and I don't know. From my perspective, that made me feel as if I wasn't important in that regard. So it made it difficult for me to form an intimate connection with them at that point. But
Interesting. I think was really curious. Like you make a really good point that the types of DMs that you were getting that are particularly unwanted, and the thing that kind of gave you like a sense of control in the interaction from Bumble, for example. Um, it's like, how would you have preferred that person who's genuinely interested in you? How would you prefer that they approach you? Because I think what I've seen or what I've heard, and sometimes in my own experience, is that people or men, because they have to pursue so many people, right? That like, and this is just lazy, or maybe the lazy way. I don't know, however you want to look at this, is they don't take the time to think and then formulate what it is that they want to say, right? Like when I would do it in the past, I would try to find something that I'd liked about their profile. Sometimes they wouldn't have anything in their profiles, and that's, I probably wouldn't message that individual. And then I would try to explain why it was that I thought that I was interested in talking to that individual. Um, and what I found was that it didn't really matter. Like the quality of connection didn't seem to matter, and the number of responses that I got didn't seem to matter. Um, as if I just would like copy and paste the same thing over and over again. Not saying that I did that, but to me, it felt like the lower effort, the more messages I could send, and that's what made it more successful. And then if I was able to get some level of attention, then I could go in and say, "Oh, hey, well, I really like this thing about your profile," and then the conversation could continue. So I guess maybe that's why some guys are doing it. Like they don't want to invest in reaching out on that level, so they're just putting a feeler out there to see if maybe you're also interested in them. But how would you prefer that interaction to go?
I would prefer well, let me start by saying this. When you just now giving me like a personal your personal experience when you were using dating apps? Like
Yeah,
that was
that was anecdotal, yeah.
okay. That's what I thought. So, sound like you were giving a genuine formulated thought. If I had received that, then I would give it my time because I can tell when someone gives something their time.
Sure.
So, um, I think the fact that you said it doesn't matter if you had said something personal or not, you still would get like no response is because you had not sent it to a genuine person. So to answer your question, the way I would like to be approached is tell me your genuine intention. Like, tell me what the reason was for you taking the time out of your day to try and form a connection with me. Like, I feel like that's how it should always be. If I was going to approach somebody, I would tell them the same thing. I
Right.
would communicate to them why I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it makes a lot of sense. And two, like what you were mentioning earlier, I think that may be true. Yeah, like you weren't meeting genuine people, but then maybe is it also true that like if you come to your dating profile and you have like dozens of messages, right? How do you know which ones to read? Do you get to read them all? Like if you had to have a process for choosing which ones to read, then what would that be? Maybe you would prioritize responding to the ones that were coming from people that were the most attractive to you, or you would reply to the ones that are the shortest, or like I think that there's a lot of things that are going on in subcontext. That's why I was saying like sometimes the low, not necessarily like the low effort like response. It seems like for me personally, the less I cared, the more successful I was. And it wasn't until I was like using the app to find friends that I was able to experience like some level of success. And I say success and like meeting people and forming connections in that regard. Um, so I think the less I cared, the more successful that it was that I was.
The
Like
less you cared about what
the
exactly.
outcome, the less I cared about the outcome of the exchange.
Okay.
But yeah, then to me, that's what I don't know what tangible difference that had in the messaging, but you would see me like I wouldn't go through as much effort
Uh-huh.
to try to convey like, hey, I'm genuinely interested in you. Here are the things that I like. I appreciate this about you, and I think that we would get along. I'd like to get to know you better. Can we talk?
Uh-huh.
Something like that. And it was more like a lines of, hey, I thought that was pretty funny. Seemed cool. Let's be friends. And then
Yeah.
that seems to be more tend to be more conducive a response.
I think that's also kind of that also really complicates it. I mean, that's the level of effort that I would want to put in is a message like that. But if there's nothing reciprocated in that regard, like hey, maybe they don't even respond at all. Maybe they just see your message and just like whatever, I don't care. I'm not attracted to this person after all.
Yeah,
That almost, I guess, frustrates me more to the extent of like I put in this effort to show you, what kind of person I am that you might not be getting from other people, but because of some other superficial reason, you decided, I'm not going to even give this person the time of day, right? So, I don't know. Maybe that was just my experience in that regard, but uh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I put in more effort than I probably should have.
I don't know about that, man. Like I think what Lauren's saying makes a lot of sense too. Like the right person just didn't read it, And the real question is like, does it have to be this game of like I'm playing a numbers game, Like I'm one of 100, and it's like I have to try to make my message seem as appealing as possible. That really does like drive back to that like primalistic, animalistic, competitive environment where it's like we're competing, and I have to be the most attractive person, or I'm not going to get a chance with some of these people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. But maybe that just goes to explain why it is that you're getting like such low effort responses or like heart emojis or whatever, Lauren. Like I don't think that it's appropriate or necessary, but I could feel I could feel it weather down on me. Like I'm obviously taking the time to basically write not necessarily like a full essay, but I'm putting some effort into it. And what am I putting all this effort into for? If I could just have sent 15 times as many messages, then I think I'm okay with weeding through the people that are responding and figuring out who's genuine that way, as opposed to just always doing a genuine response to people who don't even have bios. You know what I mean? Like you pick
Yeah,
and choose your battles, but I guess
that would be a lot more efficient. It honestly just comes down to the fact that people using dating apps, I don't believe, take it either don't take it seriously or forget that these are real people and you're interfering with their life, you know? Like when you get on this app, it's two people communicating still, but
Hmm.
just because it's like a screen, you forget that you're speaking to somebody. You're speaking to someone.
sure.
Right. And I definitely think that there's a level of I guess, for lack of a better way of saying
Very
it, chivalry that's
impersonal.
lost there.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's necessary, right? If it's an efficiency game and that's where modern dating is going, then
mhm.
you have to play the game, right? Like,
If that's where modern dating is going, and if you decide to play the game, but I do not. After everything we've talked about so far, I mean, clearly it's disappointment.
You just got to find the right place to search for that other person. So I think that the struggle uh, is to get us back on to a track of I guess I guess genuineness. Like I think that people aren't as genuine as they
yeah,
should be, and I think it just comes down to I think that men and women are starting to want different things, and I think it's being decided on by, I guess, cultural or societal uh, decisions at this point, rather than what do you actually want out of a relationship. I know that was difficult from. Uh, I had to have that conversation with my current girlfriend. I was like, well, listen, I was like, I do like you. I'm attracted to you. I think we have the same values, but what do you want out of a relationship at this point? Like, are you looking for are you looking for a traditional man? And it's like, if you are, then are you willing to perform the roles of a traditional woman? Because I want to perform the role of a traditional man, and I'm not, and I would want to. I'm looking for someone who is willing to be a relatively because nowadays I don't think I'm even interested in somebody that's fully traditional, but I'm looking for someone that is nurturing, that wants to build a family and a future with me, that kind of type of thing. So
you think you could define like what you mean when you say traditional man and traditional woman? Because I think it's important.
yeah, I think we kind of glossed over that a little bit earlier, but I guess my view of a traditional man is, being a provider, being, you know, being the provider, the protector, the person that is making sure, like I say decision maker, but really I think it just comes down to, the final decision, not in a controlling way, but in a
Right.
guiding way.
Like in an executing kind of way, you know?
Exactly. So
Facilitating.
sorry, say that again.
Like you would be facilitating both of your lives.
Essentially, so there's a conversation that I had not too long ago in which I spoke to someone and their spouse, and the way that they presented it was that she said, we make decisions together. However, if he were to say something like, hey, this is a bad idea, we shouldn't do it, I don't want to go through with that, then she would support him in that decision.
Hmm.
And I think at that point it just comes down to whether it be he's more in tune with the finances, he has a plan already built out that he was recognizing that's going to be more beneficial to the both of them. I it's a little difficult because I know that a lot of people may look at that and they're like, no, that's controlling. That is like you are controlling the entire relationship and what gets done. But the
Yeah.
reality is that one decision that gets made is like 0.1% of the time. Every other time it's being made by the both of them, or he's just like, I don't. This really isn't going to impact us regardless. You just make the decision here, type thing. And
Sure.
I'm okay with that 100%. I don't need to make all the decisions in the relationship. I think that there are going to be times where, so my background in the military, something I told Audie way back in the day was when we first got married. I was like, listen, if I come home to you one day, or I shoot you a text message or a phone call, and I say get on a plane and leave and go to this other place, I may not be able to tell you why, but I need you to trust my reason, like trust me in the way that you will just do for whatever reason. So I don't know, that's just kind of the way I view it from I guess the male side.
Right.
In the role of a traditional woman, I mean, really all I'm looking for is someone who's going to be nurturing, someone who's wanting to have a family, someone who wants to, if not So if you have your own career, you want to maintain that career, I have no issue with that. Um, that being said, I think that you are the primary in control and charge of the household as well. I think that is the generally more acceptable or accepted, uh, uh, I guess, ideology in that regard. Like the
Okay.
woman is, I guess, the traditional in the traditional nuclear family perspective. The woman is in charge of the household. The man is in charge of like protecting and providing for the household type thing.
Yeah, traditional sex roles, traditional marriage.
Hmm.
The woman is staying at home, taking care of the kids, clean, making sure that things are done right, like in the house and all that, right? Good wife, wise mother, that kind of thing, right?
Right. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess my perspective on it has shifted slightly because of I guess the way that the current or modern times are. Um, but yeah.
And I think that's okay because you're keeping this your traditional mindset and value, but you're just letting it adapt to the society you happen to be living in, which is probably what it was probably a trend seen throughout history as well because everybody had to change a couple things here and there, but it was still the same. And also I would like to mention that how you said people might think you're like totally controlling. uh People get authoritarian and authoritative confused. So that's just something you could remember if you
Yeah.
ever feel like that again.
That's a good point. I didn't ever think about it in that regard. I guess the difference of the two definitions. I know that there is. I knew there was a difference, but the only ever time you hear of someone complaining about it, they always use I guess the more controlling version of it, which is, authoritarian. So,
Yeah. But people like their autonomy, and like especially in more modern terms, especially Western ideology values freedom, right? So those sorts of things that potentially infringe on somebody's freedom, they really kind of cringe at and kind of lump into that bucket. So I think
mhm.
it's important. I'm getting that right, like especially traditional, like when that is being considered. Like when we say traditional, we're obviously acknowledging the fact that it's something that is of a thing of the past, and where those traditional values like derive from.
Mhm.
I feel like, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think about this. I feel like as a society, our roles in men and women, as men and women, um, have changed in such a way, or at least the expectations have changed in such a way that these former systems that we have in place um, don't work anymore. Like it was necessary for like to be in a relationship for your survival as a woman, like a long time ago, right? We're talking a long, long time ago, right?
Mhm.
Like if you didn't have somebody who could protect you and could provide for you, like you didn't live, like so that's something that existed, and as that migrates to a bit more recent times, that's been true to some extent for a while, except for you trade like actual survival for social survival, or like now the value is like I need to find a man who can provide because I'm going to be a traditional housewife. I don't get the opportunity to get a job. I don't get the opportunity to go to school. Somebody has to provide for me. And so now we're in a society where that's not true anymore. Women can go out, they can compete in the work environment. Sometimes they can be more successful than men. We're finding now that they're finishing school and they're doing better at school than men are. So they're actually more qualified for these higher paying jobs than traditionally so. And so now the standard that I would like a man who is able to provide typically means like I want the option to not be able to work and to sustain the lifestyle that I still have. And or I would like for my partner to make more money than I do. Right.
Right. Well, and
But
I think there's a big difficult. I don't think that's possible anymore in a lot of ways because generally you think about what is the general like the average household income, like not household income but like single person's income.
yeah,
Generally it's going to be between 30-40,000, right? I think that's the
you're
national
correct.
average. So that is something that's a single person can live off of. That is not something that a couple, or even a family can live off of nowadays. So I don't think that that is generally possible, and I think that is in part due to the fact that at some point, and this is not a blame game, this is not something intended to say you are the problem, but women entering the workforce when they did, I think was the big shift in where, okay, we have both of them working. There's no reason why we have to pay to support an entire family's household. Now we can just pay them individually, and that will make up the entire amount for the household of what's required. Um, I know that's a little off onto the I guess the economic side, but I think I think it's because of that that it's not easy to have a traditional household anymore, or a nuclear family, because people just don't make as much money anymore. I think you
That's
have to
true.
have a very high, like a high level position in a company to be able to do that, I should say,
Or work multiple jobs, or have a side hustle,
right.
or one of those sorts of things. I think that's absolutely true in what you're saying.
Hmm.
The cost of living has far outpaced the increase in wages that have happened
Hmm.
over the past 10 years. And I used to know the number off the top of my head, but the percentage is staggering.
Hmm.
How much more it costs to even rent or to purchase a home.
Hmm.
uh, like, you can't even provide the roof over somebody else's head these days on your own. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much of an outlier I am, but I own my own condo, right? Like, I purchased this place. And I don't know, there are not a lot of people that can do that. If I were in their shoes, I don't know that I could be able to do that. If I had a kid and I had to provide for the kid as well, would I be able to do this?
Hmm.
So what you're saying is true. Like, the economy doesn't support the traditional ideology of that household family, to the point where, eh, they're not you don't pay enough for it, or you have to be pretty well off in order to do it. Um, but you can't agree still, right? Or maybe I'm not right in saying this, that the expectation is still that the man is the provider for a lot of these situations, or in a lot of women's perspective.
Hmm.
um, and that if the man is out earning them, then that's an issue for them. um, they can't perpetuate that ideology. I think they could sacrifice, like, hey, I don't want to work for as long as my partner makes more money than I am, then all of my financial security is within this individual. And that's much more difficult to do these days, and
Right.
even harder if men aren't finishing school. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I guess it
Uh,
depends on whether it's like trade school or like I guess I wouldn't even call it higher education, a college education nowadays.
yeah, sure. Well, that both of those things are diminishing in completion. What were you saying, Lauren?
as a woman who doesn't only like men, I don't see the significance in one person having a specific role. I just want both me and my partner to be successful. And I think anybody can be successful to the capacity of what society gives us. And I'm honestly just thankful that things aren't as traditional as they used to be, because I am an independent woman and I want to do all these things that are are viewed or have been viewed as strictly the male role, because I am fully capable of doing it as well in the world we live in now. Whenever we were like nomads and I don't know, just caveman times and stuff, clearly we needed men to have the roles that they did, and clearly women needed to have the roles that they did due to our physical differences. But now that we have become as developed as we are in the world, like as a whole, we have all these things. Like, we don't actually have to plant our own food because people will plant the food, and like it's their job to do that. Everybody has their jobs. It doesn't necessarily have to be men have these jobs, women have these jobs, because we live in a world where everything is that much more accessible. So now women can do these things because they don't necessarily have to do these other things. There's not
Sure.
that.
I see what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree, but that whole ideology is based on the assumption that everything is going to maintain, like society is going to be maintained the way that it is as it stands right now, and that somebody's going to always be there to perform that role. I do have a question about, what is your, so because you talk about it as a partnership, do you think there needs to be a leader in the relationship? And I'm not saying that it has to be conform to the general, I guess the or the traditional gender role, or the traditional genders. Just down to, what do you think that there needs to be a person, like someone in charge?
Right, I understand. I don't think there's a need to establish whether one person is in charge over another person if you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship. But I do believe that there is one that will be more prone to taking the leadership role, but it should never be a definite, I am this and you are this.
Yeah, maybe more of a fluid, like
A
I
fluid.
take the lead on these things, and he takes the lead on some other things, and we kind of switch off, and we support each other, kind of deal.
Right. So the reason why I ask is because, uh, you were saying that, women are able to. I'm trying to quote it properly here, not quote, but reference it properly here. But your idea was that women nowadays are able to do these things, and because you were strong and independent, you want to be able to do these things that you weren't able to do previously, right? Or like what women wouldn't be able to do previously, I should say.
Yes.
Okay. So this may be going a little, maybe off kilter in that regard, but
Um, Before you say that, let me
mhm,
say it's not because I am independent, and it doesn't even have to do with me being a woman. It's just because I exist, I can do these things. Like, that's how I see everything. It's so objective that it doesn't even matter if you are male, female, your race, where you're from. Like, it's just like, if there was utopia, that is how it would be. So the as far as I can take it is my mindset in the world that I live in.
gotcha.
So it doesn't even matter what society is doing as long as I can see that.
Right. So because we didn't really talk about this previously, what is it that, based on your age, are you still in college right now? Are you still working towards a degree or a trade school? What's
I am working towards a degree as well as working in the workforce.
Gotcha. Do you mind sharing what your, I guess, what your education program is towards right now, as well as what your, I guess, what job you're working?
Sure. I'm a business finance major working as a bartender in Highland Park.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. That's awesome. So what? This is a difficult. This is kind of difficult for me to, I guess, formulate my thought process right now. In the context of a relationship, do you expect? You said that you expect it to be a partnership, so I assume that you don't expect your partner necessarily to out earn you, right?
I don't think it's a factor in something that I would find important to me.
Okay. Do you think that it's important to, I guess, maintain or be able to maintain finances within a relationship, right?
Yes.
Right. So previously, so you said that you've dated someone before. So in that context, if they're let's say they're an athlete, right? You're a business major. So you would generally take the leadership when it comes to the financial role. I'm trying to better understand what your perspective is here, right? So what is something that you don't necessarily enjoy doing or don't want to do, I guess, within the context of just general living? So it could be cooking, it could be like nurturing a family, it could be like working on the car, like fixing something with the car, whatever it might be. What is something you don't? guess you don't want to have to do?
Dishes.
Dishes.
I like it. Yeah, that's what the dishwasher's for, right? um, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So I guess so based so you would expect somebody else to take the leadership role on that in that regard, right? But
Would be
If
nice.
if it would be nice, yeah. If my partner lives with me, loves me, and notices I don't like doing the dishes, I would hope they would do them for me.
gotcha. Would you ever communicate that to them, or would you just kind of
I
hope
would
that it happens?
always communicate it to them. Just because I'm that kind of person, I'd be like, hey, I really hate doing the dishes. Can you do them for me, please?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Well, I don't want to jump too far away from our subject here, but yeah, because I feel
I
like we're starting
definitely
to.
recall.
Sorry, say that again.
I said I definitely still recall.
Uh, I just got lost.
It's okay.
um,
It's okay. We're here to help you.
yeah. So no. Yeah. So the reason why I bring this up is because I think that there is a level of, I guess, traditional leadership in a relationship, and it doesn't have to fall to the male. I don't think. I think that generally, stop. Uh, I think that generally men do take on that role for a majority of things. It doesn't mean everything. I look back at my own parents' marriage, and that there's a majority of things that my dad will take the lead on, but there's a lot of
I
things that
agree.
my mom takes the lead on as well because she's just better at that, right? So she has her particular set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say.
Yeah.
So
That's like how my family is too.
right.
Very traditional. I see how it works very well.
Hmm.
Yeah, it works the best, I think, too, when both partners understand what that expectation is and they're happy to fulfill those roles. And two, where you can communicate should there be any gray area in between those two things. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
My mom definitely accepts that my dad has that final say. And I see it too.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't have to fall to. I'm not saying that it has to fall to that like a single to the male or the female specifically. I just think that in general, in a relationship, there will be for lack of better way of saying it, just a general leader in the relationship that's going to make the final decisions on a lot of things, just because it's difficult to make decisions sometimes, right? And if you're not an expert on it, or neither of you are an expert, ideally you would have someone like everybody would be moving the same direction, and I think that's why companies are set up the way that they are. And generally, the most successful businesses they have well, all successful businesses they have a leader, although they have a council of people that are hugely impactful to the decision making process, right?
Yeah.
So, that being said, I, I, I think I typically, I guess, am attuned to that style of relationship just in in regards to the fact that I believe that there needs to be a single, I guess, head of the household. But again, my point of saying this is not to say that they are the the dictator or the de facto decision maker for everything. So
Sure.
I I like how you compare um relationships having a leader in this traditional role that which is the role that you prefer, if I'm not mistaken.
you mean like me taking on the leader of the household?
Yes. That
I,
that's what you look for,
I think
right?
generally I do fall into that role. Yeah.
Okay, I was just clarifying. I just
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to be sure before I made an assumption.
Yeah.
I like how you compare leaders in relationships to leaders in business uh companies and whatnot. That leads to my question of, do you see love and relationship similar to that of a business? That it runs similarly to that?
I
Is
don't
that how you see it?
know. But so that is the caveat I think between relationships and business, is that because there is a connection there between the two, uh, obviously there's not going to be in a business. The whole point of that is just to say that there is success in how businesses are run, and if it's a successful business, it thrives, it hires more people, it gets bigger, as opposed to with a relationship, or not opposed to, but I guess the similarity there is that in a relationship, if it is thriving, if it is successful, then the family gets bigger. They get nicer things, like they move to a better house, that kind of situation. So
Right. So
and go ahead.
would you say that the defining factor between the two relationships and businesses is the fact that they both have a definite leader at the forefront?
Um, I think that generally a successful marriage or business, there will be a single leader. I'd have to get the exact statistics on that, but that being said,
I'm
I
just
guess
asking your personal opinion.
yeah. So I guess the metaphorical, I guess, comparison that I make is metaphorical, the not anecdotal. I'm trying to think exactly what that is, but I guess the real world comparison is that as we have moved away from this traditional household, I guess, leadership style, or traditional, there is a leader in the household. Marriages have increasingly become dysfunctional, or have ended in separation. I think we're at 51 or 52% of most marriages end in divorce nowadays. So
What do
I,
you think's the cause of that?
I think it comes down to that there is a lack of people fulfilling, I guess, traditional roles. I think uh, I think that lack of fulfilling those additional roles has led to other problems, meaning like financial insecurity and intimate lack of intimacy within a relationship. I think all of that has led from, or has been, it has the lack of a traditional household has led to that kind of situation,
I
The
want
or
to
those
just
situations.
chime in real quick and tell you you're correct. 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce in America currently.
Gotcha.
Yes, the divorce rate is extremely high, but I never thought to
Is it?
give the cause of that to the fact that traditional households are not held. I would never think traditional household not existing means divorce.
Wait.
That's just a comparison that I've drawn. Just like I guess I just looked at the when that kind of ended is when we started to slope down. I guess
Right.
more violently when it comes to how maybe sorry, slope up when it comes to divorces and such. So
Wait, what are you talking about? Because divorce rates are declining. They've been declining. They're like at a 50-year low for divorce rate.
Oh, I thought you said high. You're saying divorce rates are lowering
Yeah, divorce rates are lowering.
that's not
and
what I was.
traditional households are also declining?
I think what Sean is trying to say is that he thinks the reason why the rate is as high as it is because of there's not an environment that's conducive for traditional marriages. But
Right.
the
That's
statistics are showing that divorce rates are falling.
Right.
right. Okay. So this is what I was trying to lead to is that I don't think traditional homes create a lower rate. I think traditional homes create a higher rate of divorce. That's my point of view. But I was just trying to establish yours before I told you mine.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think as traditional households have changed. So when would you say that the traditional households ended?
I cannot.
Probably,
Not ended, but like it became much less common, I guess.
probably in the 80s. I would say the shift is from the 70s into the 80s, probably late 70s, early 80s.
Right. And so this particular graph that I'm looking at from Bowling Green State shows that between the 60s and the 80s is when it increased the most violently, from like 9.2 divorces per 1,000 people to 22.6 per 1,000 people. Um, and that being so that being said, like that is when the most violent, time occurred, and it started to fall down recently. I think because I think that society has started moving back towards those traditional marriages. I think that in general, the media and public opinion, I think that generally people will say that we're still moving away from that, but I don't think that has changed a whole lot since then.
I I disagree with what you're saying, respectfully. I think that what's happening is that as women are starting to get more freedom, as they're realizing that they don't have to be in marriages, that you're seeing divorce rates spike when they do have the autonomy to say that I'm supported and supporting myself and I'm structured to get out of this situation. Because I think that when you're in a marriage due to necessity, when there's no way out, then you stick with it, right? You learn how to cope. But I think that when you know that you don't have to accept bad behavior, abusive responses, and I'm not saying that all traditional marriages are abusive or whatever the case may be, but what I'm saying is that there are a lot of cases where there's reasons why people don't want to be in those marriages anymore, and specifically women. If there's a direct correlation between women earning more, having more freedom, success in school, and their own autonomy, then that may counter, whatever marriage structure that exists currently. And now we're seeing that shift that's happening, causing that change in the household, and now women are leaving. I think that the reason why divorce rates are lower now is because marriage rates are lower now. Marriage rates are also in a huge decline. People aren't getting married as often as they used to. And I think that now that they're able to settle into partnerships where they are both on the same page, maybe that's a bit less more traditional, or at the very least, if it is traditional, then it's something that both parties are now agreeing to walking into it. I think that's what's contributing more to lower divorce rates and more successful marriages, and not necessarily the fact that traditionalism was always the right answer to begin with. That's what I see. But I don't know. Like, I'm interested to what you guys have to say about that.
Maybe so, and I think I think the other part is that there have been more created, or I guess the government has created more safeguards for people that are separating and becoming divorced, in regards to uh, I don't know, I because I look at it this way, and the vast majority of marriages that are becoming or ending in divorce are initiated by women. I think it's like 70+% or something like that. Um, and I think that is, I don't know. I feel, from my perspective, I feel like that is a level of, I guess, lack of dedication to a situation. I think that's unwillingness to work out the problems or communicate to figure out what those problems are. And a little bit of that is a little bit anecdotal to my own, um, experience in it, and that whenever we became separated, I worked really hard to push for, like, let's go to therapy, let's go talk to somebody, let's talk about these problems we have with each other. And while she began that way, there came a time where I guess was it, she had already made the decision that she was going to leave the home and she wasn't going to work it out. She felt obligated to try to, for whatever reason that I don't recall what it was that she said. Um, but at least in that regard, she was willing to go to therapy until the therapist told her that what she was doing was wrong, basically.
Mm-hmm.
In the exact thing that was said was, the longer you stay away from home, the harder it's going to be to come back. And that's whenever she was unwilling at that point to continue working on that relationship. So,
Sure.
and I don't blame her for that. I like, just to be clear, I have zero hate or disgust for my ex-wife at this point. I want to make that clear. There was, the situation sucked. It sucked that, I went through, 3 years of separation, but before we actually did get divorced. Um, but I did I did what I could to try and fix the relationship, and I don't know what she was doing from her side because I didn't have full clarity on that. But
Sure.
yeah, but that being said, I have seen it firsthand that there was a level of unwillingness to work on the relationship once it was established that it was a problem.
So my question too is, and I would maybe like you can opine on this a little bit. What you're saying is accurate. That like most of the majority of marriages, I guess I should say, the majority of divorces are initiated by women. Why do you think that is? Why do you think women are more likely to end the relationship or to initiate the divorce than men are?
I guess from my perspective, they saw something in the person, and that's what made them decide, yes, I do want to get married to you. But then whenever they started living with them, when they started building a family with them or a household with them, they realized that what they wanted was different from what they made a decision to do there. That being said, they made a commitment that they didn't follow through on. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that I think it comes down to they don't know what they're getting into before they jump into it, I guess. So I guess that would be my.
Okay. What do you? I'm curious what you think it is, Lauren. What do you think?
I think it's because men believe they are doing what they need for their wife without actually seeing what it is that their wife needs.
Mm.
And that's a very vague answer because I could choose different topics. It just depends on what it is. Like, for example, it could be love, relationship, marriage equals love. Yes?
Yeah, and I agree with what you said previously. I think that there is a level of not recognizing what your partner needs at that point. I think it goes both ways, but I think that
Definitely does.
I think that the biggest part, I guess the biggest defining factor of whether that becomes an issue is the communication and how clearly it is communicated. Because there were times where it was communicated to me, but I didn't. It's like speaking Spanish to me. Like I can't fully understand it. Like I can get a general idea of like what you are trying to convey to me, but I don't fully comprehend what feelings, what thoughts you have when you're saying this sentence to me. So,
Sure.
for example, like I'm not feeling loved or something along those lines. So,
I'm with you. I think that what you're saying is very valid.
I
And
also think it's very valid. I understand what you said.
um, me, like, what I personally, what I think, and you asked me this question a while ago, and I don't know if you remember, but you said, like, I asked, like, what is it that men can do when they're faced with this situation in the dating field? Like, what can be done about that? And I think that it's kind of evident too, in all aspects, all the way up into the end of a marriage. And this is what I believe to be true. I think that as women start to become more independent, the burden and the pressure of them to uphold any level of traditional standard that exists is no longer uniformly spread between the two partners. And it can be very difficult for women. I think that there are some pros and cons to the traditional mindset because women actually have to carry children. They're usually the more nurturing of the two parties, so they usually spend a lot more time with the child, and raising the child is something they're a bit more interested in doing. But also, it can be very demanding to have an active role in a career. I think you're saying that women are a lot less likely to have more children as a result of this, and also that they may feel held back by these sorts of things, and particularly by marriages. I think the reason why women initiate divorces, I think one of them is because they out earn their partners to some extent, so they don't. They're carrying the financial burden. Um, I think that they take on more emotional burden in some cases, especially when it comes to like having to raise children, also having to go to work, and then also coming home and trying to feel like or get their needs met by their partners as well. And now that the need to be with a man in a relationship is a lot lower, women don't have to tolerate or accept it anymore. And I think this is leading into like, so what can you do about it if you're a man, right? I think in today's standards, I think in today's paradigm, men just don't bring enough to the table anymore. I think that before it was okay to work hard and earn a living and provide for the family. That was like primarily what it is that you do. You do that, the woman doesn't have to work. She takes care of the house, she takes care of the kids, she takes care of the laundry, she takes care of dishes, things like that, right? You don't have to worry about those things. You're a man, you go, you work, you make those things happen. Now the woman is working. So what is it? And sometimes they're earning more than you. So what are you bringing to the table? And I think that what we need to do, especially as men too, like, is that we need to be a lot more emotionally intelligent, and we need to be able to be more emotionally available for our partners, because I think that that's what's needed from women, and that's what we're missing. And I think that women are just, they don't have to put up with it anymore. You know, they can go and they can pursue that elsewhere, or they can further their own careers and provide for themselves if they really want to do that. Like I said before, like, if you're talking with your partner and it's important that you do this, and you determine that you want to enter in a traditional relationship, then that's great. You guys are reaching that understanding. That's what it is. I think that even you would agree, Sean, that if you decided that you're going to take the traditional role in a marriage and you lost your job, you would no longer be a suitable partner for your partner in that case. What do you do if you're not providing for your family? You're not. You're nothing. And that you're not holding up your end of the bargain, right? So I think similarly in this cases where relationships are now becoming more even, men need to bring the emotions to the table. You need to be able to listen better, contribute more, help out a little bit more around the house. You got to spread it around and to have it be more even. I think that's what women are looking for. And I think that's the reason why you have fewer people committing in a relationship, but more so like that the divorce rate is what it is, right? That it still can be at that level, and why women are the ones that are initiating it. That's at least what I think about the situation.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I can't say that I agree 100% on I guess what you're saying, but I do agree that there is a level of like emotional support that comes from that needs to come from men nowadays, as opposed to uh, just from the wives in the relationship. But I will say that I think that, well, I guess I have a question more so. Do you think that men should move away from being a traditional man then?
I think the traditional standards and ideologies don't work in today's society anymore.
No, no, no.
Not nearly as
I
well
mean
as they used
conforming
to.
to their traditional roles.
I mean, I think that, I mean, no, I don't think that that's necessary. And if that's something that a man wants to do, I think that's totally fine. Uh, However, I think, like I said before, that it's important that you find a partner that also wants that, because otherwise you're going to find that if you're deficient in those other aspects that I'm saying is becoming important, that women still are going to be in the position where they know that they still have options. And if they're not demanding, if they're asking for you to meet their needs, especially emotionally, and you're not willing to pick up a book and learn how to express your feelings or to how to listen or to connect with somebody, that she's going to become discontent in the relationship. And before, where traditionalism was acceptable, women put up with that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is just the way that it is. My husband never listens to me. But now that's not the case anymore. I think that that woman is a lot more likely to initiate a divorce in today's society. So I think that if you do want to conform to that, that's great, but understand that there's consequences to it, and also that I don't think that it really holds up that well in today's society. Does that answer your question?
Yes. However, it leads me to my follow-up in what what about in the cases where the women, or sorry, the woman and the man uh, enter into the relationship under these expectations, and then the expectations change for one of them.
Cool. Then you have to be able to come to the table and talk about that as adults. Hey, I understand that this is what we agreed upon originally. It's not working for me anymore. Can we compromise? And if you can't compromise, then you need to find other. You need to leave the relationship, right? But if you can, then do it. Make those changes. Commit. Be the man that you say that you want to be, and hold yourself accountable to it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that that's a necessity. However, I will say that it doesn't always lead to compromise. It leads to um, a give and take. It leads to one person getting everything that they want out of it, and the other side being left with nothing essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that is a problem with, I guess, what is the expectation out of marriages now. But I think the biggest thing is just that people aren't willing to come to the table and talk and communicate and express what they or convey what they are needing at that point. Which I think that's a huge. I think that's an issue that I don't know if it's something that everybody has to fix for themselves, right? But it's not something that can be fixed for themselves because I
Sure.
think, frankly, society is just like, oh, no, you're not happy in that relationship. There's something wrong
Get
with it.
out of there.
Leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out. And I think that I think there's multiple reasons as to why that is an acceptable excuse or an acceptable or de facto, I guess, uh, escape rope.
Sure.
Uh, but um, I think that it is very difficult to navigate that nowadays. So
No, I agree. And I want to be clear too, like that's what I think from the male perspective, like as far as what men can do. I do recognize, and you can't ignore the fact that men are initiating divorces still. 30% at the very least are
right,
being initiated by men. And then there's some percent in the middle that's amicable, I'm sure. And so there are some things, right? If I think that there's a lot of value in saying, I know we're going through a rough period of our lives, but let's sit down, talk it out, and work it together. And sometimes you can't do that. You can't reach a consensus. You can't reach that conclusion. You can't make a compromise. And when that happens, sometimes the relationship ends because of it. I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I think that women also struggle with being able to express what their needs are. I think women also can struggle with their communication skills. I believe that to be true. However, I understand that societally, and sometimes, at least based on what I was made to understand growing up, men don't have that toolkit. Uh, like I was discouraged from expressing my emotions and conveying how I felt as a child because they were not manly things. You could call it toxic masculinity. Uh, those things kind of hold us back. We enter in the arena with the handicap, but I think at some point we have to take responsibility for what that is and learn those new tools and be partners, better partners for our partners in a relationship, or find somebody else who's willing to put up with that. Honestly, that's what I think it comes down to.
hmm,
But I think we can't be surprised that women are saying that they don't want to deal with it anymore, and they don't have to. Um, I agree with that.
makes sense. I will say the other thing that I wanted to bring up though, in regards to the I guess the divorce rates, you brought up the fact that it's 30% of the time it's men are still initiating divorce. What is the reason for men initiating divorce generally? I think
Uh, I don't know. I'm imagining like I don't actually know what that may be.
I've been trying to find it, but the statistics are very much skewed in like they look at the reasons why women initiate divorce more so because it's such a stark difference.
Yeah.
But one of the common themes with whenever I've been looking up, what's the reason for men initiating divorce is because of infidelity,
Yeah, that was my guess. Yeah.
and if that's the case, then it's not the same as I guess the reasons for I think women initiating divorce a majority of the time. Um,
Is that true?
it,
What if 30%, wouldn't the statistics allow us to say that 30% of women's divorces are also initiated by infidelity? My understanding is that men cheat just as often as women do. So could 30% of that 70% be infidelity and it be covered? I know that's not fair because obviously there are other reasons why men would
right.
initiate divorce, but you
I,
see what I'm saying?
yeah, but that still leaves 40% in there for the reasoning for why women do it, and that would be a majority. So, and that's assuming that the whole 30% is because of infidelity, right?
Correct.
But that being said, I think that that being said, I don't agree that that men cheat just as much as women. I think that it's more common for women to cheat.
I don't understand that to be true, but maybe.
And the reason why is because I think that they have so many more options than men generally. Um, I think that the bell curve is very much different the attractiveness for men and women, as well as I think that there's a difference in how, I guess, how people view cheating, or how the separate genders view cheating.
Yeah, everybody has a standard that they say if you cross this line, then that's cheating. And
Right.
I think that's what they would report cheating is.
Mm-hmm.
Just because one partner doesn't understand what that is doesn't mean that they didn't cheat. And I don't think that affects the statistics at all. Furthermore, I would be more inclined to believe that men are more likely to cheat. But my understanding is that they're pretty close. Just because you have more options doesn't mean that you're more likely to appreciate what you already have. I don't know if this is inherently true. And I think it's what you were mentioning earlier about like how men pursue more than women do. I don't know.
Right, because we have less options. That's what I'm
I
saying,
don't
though,
think.
is because I don't think because the difference is that whenever men, so even with what we were talking about earlier when it came to dating apps and Instagram and all that, Lauren was saying that she receives more DMs from men, or she receives DMs from men, while I can confidently say I have never received a DM. In that regard, I would feel more appreciated in the case that, I was in a relationship, wife wasn't, spending any time with me, girlfriend, whoever it might be, but then somebody else is like, hey, I'm interested in you, and they took the time out of their. I'm not saying I would cheat because of that. I'm saying that I think that there is a difference of I guess priorities when it comes to for men and women on whether they like on what they see as important as part of a relationship, whereas I think women value appreciation and attention more than men do. Um,
I'd like to say something actually.
go for it.
Sure.
Um, I think men are more inclined to pursue, therefore, one would assume that the rate for cheating, for infidelity, is that men would be higher. Although, like Dalvin mentioned earlier, the statistics say that they are about the same. But men take action. Men are the one who send the DMs. I am a woman who is both attracted to men, women, everybody else in between, and I have never once been DM'd by a woman, nor have I been approached by a woman or catcalled by a woman. And I've never approached a man either because women aren't the ones to take initiative, men are.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, Sean. But I think that you're conflating initiation with reciprocation. Like just because there's more opportunity that exists doesn't mean that you're going to act on it always. And I think that if a man makes a decision to reach out to another woman with the express consent to cheat, if there is a response, it most likely will happen.
So
But I think that the rate of reciprocation is the same. I think it's no different. And the only reason why I think this is the case is just because Lauren gets more DMs doesn't mean that she goes on more dates, right? Like,
right, no. I'm giving this is based on I guess a metaphor, not a metaphorical, not even anecdotal. I can't.
Perhaps
There's the
perhaps personal,
sorry.
perhaps personal.
yeah, maybe it is anecdotal.
I don't know if it is. I don't think that because
It's
it's
okay
not
if it
something that
is.
I've ever experienced. So
Okay.
no, no, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to use. I'll think of it later and message you about it and be like, I knew I remembered this. But
Yeah.
anyways, no. But when it comes down to it, I think that there is uh, I think that because I think there's more opportunity for women to cheat because men are more likely. I say more likely, more I guess forward with those kinds of things. But I would ask Lauren, all these DMs that you've received, are any of those from married men?
What's she
Fun
know?
fact, if you want to know, fun fact, my old drug dealer was married the entire time, but would initiate making out with me in his car and
Gotcha,
text me in between, and he's married the whole time.
gotcha. So would he be considered successful in that regard?
I don't think it would be considered successful.
I mean, successful in like finances, like he is an attractive person because of his situate like the I guess the because of his financial situation, because of his living situation, like is he successful? Like, would you have viewed him that way?
Mm, very good question, and I have a very good response. And I will give you details because I feel like it will help.
Okay.
He would pull up to the house in a car from the early 2000s, maybe the 90s, always dressed down, but I thought he smelled good and he was talked very softly, so I was attracted to that. And I asked him to grab a drink at my bar one time, and that wasn't because of anything he may have had or not had. It was just because I enjoyed his presence. And then I can see on his Instagram that man's had ice on both wrists and his neck, different BMWs, like his wife. So you never know who somebody really is. And I didn't have any intention besides getting to know somebody I was drawn to. But when I see someone's true colors, I was definitely not having it and blocked him on everything. So it didn't matter if he had all these cars or if he had all this jewelry or lavish lifestyle with money around always. Like, it mattered his character.
Right. Okay.
So I would say he's not successful because he's not living a genuine lifestyle.
No, no, no. I meant like, I guess it didn't. I wasn't getting down to like the. I guess I wasn't getting to that. I guess aspect. Just specifically he was well taken care of, like he was able to take care of himself type situation. And the reason why I brought this up is because I had been seeing I've seen a few clips talking about how in general, like talking back to the hypergamy kind of situation, that a small subsect of men that are extremely successful are the ones that you see are the ones that are actually cheating, and it's because that most women are drawn to those men.
Yes, but what I'm trying to convey to you is that that is not how he portrayed himself to me. I never would have known that he was super successful or whatnot because that is not how he presented himself, although that is who he was. You see? I
I
didn't get to see that he is super successful. I just thought we had things in common.
Sure. Um, I don't know. And this is,
I
just kind of a side thing for
I
me,
wasn't
but
I wasn't motivated to do anything with him because I thought he was successful or could take care of himself, is what
yeah,
I'm trying to say.
I think I get where you're coming from, Sean. Like, if he's by himself, to be considered one of those like maybe elite or high value men in those regards, those individuals are the ones that are doing the cheating.
that's generally what we would that's generally what I've come to understand, and I think it's because of the opportunity that comes from it. I mean, generally you're going to run
Right.
into like that's exactly the term that I'd heard, the high value men. As you, I guess, are as you get up there to becoming a high value man, you are exposed to more opportunities to cheat, as opposed to with women. I think that it is generally they have opportunity all the time unless they're just the worst people on the planet.
It's
And I
really true though.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say, and I understand that to be true. I think that maybe the distinction is that like high value men are entitled to cheat is something that I think I'm understanding from that space. But I think everybody generally has the opportunity to, if you are like down bad for attention or for physical affection, then you date down, right? Like we're talking about like desirable people to some extent. And I think that like the opportunity almost always exists out there. And the types of people that you may find attractive are maybe the ones that find you attractive. If we're talking about hypergamy, but that doesn't mean you don't have any options, right? Like I think people know people, the types of people that, or the avenues that you would go through to find people to even cheat with are numerous. We talked about a few earlier. You go to a bar, people you work with, people you know, people you've met, people you've seen in public, people you've gone to school with, are all viable options. I think that the whole like hypergamistic date up situation almost is exclusively existing online. So maybe in that space specifically, you're getting more of that happening. But I think that the opportunity to cheat presents itself, especially if you're in a committed relationship, because there's so much time for it to happen, right? As opposed to if you're looking for a relationship, then boom, they're all kind of all over the place because you're seeking those things out. So I don't know, like
You mean
I
that it's
don't.
more pronounced when somebody else is interested in you? Because I don't think you have more opportunities when you're not actively seeking a relationship. But
I think you have more opportunities than you think that you do, or that you may think that someone does have, bar the fact that they're men versus women. I think that just because there are fewer opportunities for men, and I can acknowledge that they don't still have options. And I think that the statistics are kind of in support of the idea, like men cheat more often or just as much as women do. And having options does not equate to actually committing to doing the infidelity.
I think you're on the right track though with your take on successful men, but perhaps rather than the fact that they have access to more people or come across more people because they are successful,
Hmm.
rather it's because they are successful, they have more of an ego where they think that, oh, I am this macho man, I'm the top man, so I don't need just one woman.
potentially, um,
But also
yeah.
that's a stereotype as well. I mean, everything is you can't qualify one trait for anything we've been talking about. It's all circumstantial,
But
and everybody needs something different, whether it's a traditional male over female relationship or more modern dating techniques, whether dating apps work for you or they don't, you know?
so, sorry, just to clarify, what are you calling a stereotype?
A successful man having an ego or thinking he's entitled to more than one woman just because of his success.
Potentially, and I don't think that's definitely all of them, but I think that it's much
Right,
more
that's why it's a
pronounced. Yeah,
stereotype.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, and I
Same thing to go for women too, stereotypes for women. I mean, are not all our opinions considered stereotypes?
No, not inherently.
I,
Not inherently. That's a good way.
I think too, right? Like we have to consider the different positions that people are being entered into as far as walking into a dating scene, or trying to seek out relationships. I
mhm.
kind of feel like men are really ill-equipped these days to have successful relationships. Does that sound like true to you guys?
I think it holds truth.
Yeah, I
Like,
would agree. But I mean, what's well, I mean, I guess give an example. What you're talking about for what makes us ill-equipped, or what do you
I
think
think,
is ill-equipped?
yeah, I think that the idea, like one of the ideas that comes to my head, right, it's like toxic masculinity, the idea that you don't have to like express your feelings, that you have to be the provider, that you're a macho man, that you get out there, you get stuff done. I think that's a really stressful mentality to put yourself into. I think that it doesn't acknowledge the fact that you have to be concerned about your mental health as well. And I think it disconnects you from the emotional aspects of connecting with people and making genuine connections and relationships with your friends and family. And I think that those things are absolutely critical and necessary to having successful relationships. And I also think that that's something that women find a lot of value in whenever it comes to selecting a partner, is your ability to be social, to be, nurturing, to be able to, be like, yeah, to be strong and to support, but also like to be able to be empathetic and to be able to be emotionally available and things like that. And I think that if you're raised with those aforementioned principles, that you're going to have a really hard time. And I don't necessarily know that there's a lot of support for men's mental health, or that avenues for men to really like, get these skills, because they're not necessarily being taught in school. And I think it's almost like an expectation for some women. And it's like they don't want to date their sons, or like, be mothers to people, right? So maybe they feel like it's not their place to teach their partners uh, how to have these skills either. So that's why I feel like that's why I say I feel like we're coming to the table um, at a disadvantage, especially for the setup for the modern dating scene, or modern relationships where those things are a bit dated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely. I mean, I can relatively get behind it, but I will.
I can understand, yeah.
Yeah, but I will say that in regards to the term, I guess the terminology of toxic masculinity, I really question the. Maybe I just don't fully understand what, I guess what the I guess the term toxic masculinity is referring to when it comes like when you're referring to the suppression of emotions. Because if a
Hmm.
man is feeling anger and expresses anger, then he is also being a toxic like that is also toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I think I think that you have the right definition, that there is that like traditional male gender roles, and stigmatizing the idea that like men will act a certain way and must be a certain way, and you have to hide and suppress your emotions. But it's certain emotions, right? They're sensitive ones. I think that it's widely accepted by uh, traditional male gender standards that anger is an okay thing for a man to express. And so that's where
But
that
that's
part of it does come from, that if a man expresses anger, then that's a part of toxic masculinity, because they're encouraged to do so to speak, or that's like one of the emotions they're allowed to show, so to speak.
no. I
Which I
think
think I don't agree with that.
my understanding is that you're not allowed to show that, or you are toxic. But if you don't show your other emotions like caring, your sadness, your uh, being unsettled, upset, disappointed. If you don't show those, that's toxic masculinity. But if you show anger or frustration, that is also toxic masculinity.
I think that what they're trying to say when they do say that, and I agree that it is confusing, is that the expression of those things is inherently supported by traditional male standards, and that's what makes it come from toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all emotions are okay to express. I think that how you express those emotions is more important, and to acknowledge the fact that you feel them is what we should be teaching, I think. However, I think that like the part that would come from toxic masculinity is there's a culture that is supporting anger and aggression in men as being a good thing to express, or a way that men express themselves. Does that make sense? It's the suppression of the other emotions that comes from toxic masculinity, and it's the acceptance of the anger that they feel associated to toxic masculinity as well.
Yeah, I mean that kind of makes sense. I don't know. I think that there is an issue. I have issue with the I guess the way it is defined, just because it feels like it is
Trapping you?
a little bit like there's no way you can, by using the term toxic masculinity and the way it is defined, there's no way to escape, air quotes there for toxic masculinity, unless you conform to a new set of stereotypes, or a new set of role. I guess is the way that I'm kind of getting at. So
I mean, do you find that there's something wrong with ditching one accepted standard for another?
I think
If
that,
it proves to be superior, if it proves to be more beneficial
well, to who?
to
To
you.
every, yeah, to
But
you.
that's you telling me what my, what is better for me.
Well, what is better for you?
And that's I don't know. That's the thing. But I think I have the ability to recognize what is better for me more than someone else does.
Sure. Yeah, if that's what you want to believe, certainly. Yeah, do what you want to. You have the ability and the autonomy to choose whatever beliefs you want to. But I think that it doesn't detract from the fact that we can acknowledge that the way that we've been brought up before puts us at a disadvantage in today's paradigm as far as dating is and relationships are concerned.
And
And
that's
that's all that
because,
I'm trying to acknowledge.
right, but that's because the culture has shifted. So I mean,
I think I think our perspectives have switched first, and then culture came in line, because we recognize and we understand that these things don't serve us anymore, and we were misguided in having that thought to begin with. We learn new information, and then we learn from it. I don't think that it's because society has decided, no, we want men like this now. and we're going to do that. I think that this certainly is some sort of, at least to scientific backing, that supports the idea that we do better when we express ourselves and our emotions instead of suppressing them. And the advent of more avenues to create spaces for men and for men's mental health is proving that we are becoming cognizant of that and to allow them to do that. Having these beliefs in the past has proven to suppress and actually hurt us a lot. And we pass those down to our children. And that's where the challenge is coming. Hence the label of toxic masculinity. I don't really like umbrella terms like that. I think it's very good that we be specific about what it is that we do and we don't like about the things that we're teaching each other and we're accepting. To your credit, choose what works best for you and try not to associate it with some sort of standard or label, or don't feed your thoughts out of toxic masculinity. There are arguably some benefits therein too that toxic masculinity, in air quotes, I guess I can actually do air quotes, has provided. Because making strong-headed men to be able to fight through certain situations is also a trait that is very valuable. But doing it in such a way that you can keep your mental health intact makes you an even stronger man, in my opinion. And I would opt for that instead.
Right, and just to be clear, I'm not saying that I want to be able to suppress my emotions around other people. That's not my intent here. It's just to state that I think that the way that that particular term has defined it, specifically stating that some emotions are good to convey and some are not good to convey, some are good to suppress. I think that is damaging because I think that that is specifically forcing someone to, I guess in the case of a male that is traditionally masculine, forcing them to, you have to do this, but don't do this because we don't want to see that. And it just comes down to what is I guess publicly or society, I guess in
Just
public.
societally acceptable.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and just what you do in public, like around other people. If you want to go into if you want to go into a room and one of those what are they called? Those like anger rooms or
Rage rooms where you
rage
break
rooms.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that would be like the acceptable, way of purging that emotion from yourself, but not expressing it, in any other manner.
Sure.
And even then, there's been some things saying that's not the case. But I definitely think that within the confines of a relationship, I think that it is absolutely necessary to, I guess, be more uh, be more open about what emotions you're feeling without, obviously if you're feeling anger, I don't think that it's a bad thing to convey that anger as long as it doesn't lead to physical violence or anything like that, right? So
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not trying to champion or like make an argument for the toxic masculinity term as an umbrella. I understand that it is confusing to say that the expression of anger is also an advent of toxic masculinity. But what I think is more correct is that the encouragement of anger as a valid expression for violence is what makes it toxic
or
masculinity,
justification for violence. Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
justification for violence. Correct. That, oh, he did that because he was mad. Boys will be boys. That is the accepted one. I think that's dangerous. That's what I would like to believe. I may be wrong, and if it turns out that that is actually what toxic masculinity is advocating for, then I don't agree with that. But yeah, I think I made my point pretty clear.
Yeah,
My stance pretty clear. Otherwise, yeah.
I think so. Cool. Well, we are actually coming up on about 2 hours and 20 minutes now, so might be good to start wrapping it up soon, unless you had anything else you wanted to touch on before. We didn't really talk to the specifics or like verbalize the idea of what red pill versus black pill was, or the situation with Andrew Tate or anything, but I think that's something we can always come back to, circle back to in the future. So
Sure. I don't know. Like, I think it's good to wrap up. I think the discussion was good, and some of the conversations we did get into, I think, were productive. Um, all that stuff, conversations for another day. Who's to say we can't have a part two or to have this discussion somewhere else? But I think it's pretty clear, in my opinion, that we're in a really unique space. I think this is it's a really interesting time to be alive. And I think that we're being called upon as members of this society, especially if we plan to have children, to really be considerate about how it is that we are implementing our mindsets and our mentalities on the world. to really challenge and to think about the things that you're being presented with and to see if you accept them before you put them into practice.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's like a lot of what some of this is all about, especially when it comes down to how we treat each other, which I think is the most important part.
Hmm.
Um, I'd like to see us be able to navigate these spaces and these like dating online and whatnot, and to not have to worry about the safety of women or the mental health of men. Um, but I think it's going to take some time. At the very least, we recognize where we're at. So I appreciate the discussion for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I really appreciate Lauren's perspective because I think we don't agree on everything, and I'm super appreciative of that because I'd much rather have a discussion where we're talking about those alternative I guess viewpoints as opposed to just agreeing with each other the whole time, and then it's just moving through a really long discussion of saying, hey, yes, this is, we also, I agree with this. I also agree with this. This is just
Oh yeah,
sounds really dumb.
compliance is boring. I
Exactly.
I did enjoy our discussions for sure, and I enjoyed thinking, having myself think from a male perspective, two different male perspectives. Uh, so yeah, very enriching. I was happy to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah, right on.
really
Thanks
appreciate the
for
conversation.
thanks for being a part of it. Yeah, this was awesome. We need to do this again. If there's some other opportunities or topics, and we reach out, and if you want to hop on or figure out what's going on, then we can certainly do that. Yeah, we loved having it.
Eee.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. Uh, so I guess what we're thinking about for the next episode, do we want to jump over to the cyber side? Do we want to jump to Neuralink by chance?
I don't know. I think we can stew on that one. I've been really looking forward to the education
Okay.
topic that we have on the board. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about that, and I'm especially excited to be able to talk to some people who are in the field
Yeah.
and who have been in it for a while to kind of see how things have changed and what's been motivating those changes. That sounds really fascinating to me. So I think maybe we make that one the next one if that's possible. If we
Yep.
can't get the guests going, then maybe we can go and talk about some of those emergent technologies. Always fun to have the theoretical conversation, or
Yeah.
even too, if we spark enough conversation, we can come back and revisit it. But we certainly do appreciate the conversation. Whatever it is that we do decide, you'll know.
Hmm.
And if you're watching this, we certainly do appreciate you for sticking around, hanging out. We're always looking for opportunities to engage the conversation. If you have a question, if you want to share your own thoughts, please feel free to do so in the comment section below. We will read all the comments and to respond to what we can. So, yeah, had fun. Looking forward to the next one.
Definitely. And just as a final parting caveat for myself, while I did mention that I am part of the military, just to be clear, my thoughts and opinions are mine and my own, and they do not reflect any of the military or the government. So please don't freak out about any of that. This whole thing was just for a discussion. It's a moving forward. It's progression, right? But thanks all for watching. Appreciate you being here. And just as Dalvin said, we will be reading those comments and we will 100% try to respond to as many as we can. Hopefully the next discussion, which I'm actually hoping is about education as well. Hopefully it's productive, and hopefully you found some level of, I guess, value that came from this particular one. So thank you again, and have a wonderful week.